learning outcomes. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the significance of blue-collar crimes, their instigating factors of blue-collar crimes, and the current trends of blue-collar crimes. Let us start with the introduction. Speculative endeavors to elucidate the contribution in illegitimate activities often have been directed by the presumption that since crime is an unexpected behavior, its sources must be tracked in aberrant factors and circumstances determining the behavior. Criminal behavior has conveniently been associated to a delinquent's apparently unique impetus, which in turn has been recognized to a distinctive inner structure such as deviations from the physiological and the mental health, spiritual degeneration, to the impact of exceptional social and family circumstances like political and social incongruities, conflict conditions, trouble in family life, or to both. The offender could be from any class of society. It may be from the sophisticated class or maybe from the indigenous class also. Blue-collar crimes is a term used to define the crimes that are committed principally by people who are from a lower social class. This is in distinction to the white-collar crimes which we have studied in the earlier module, and that refers to the crime that is generally committed by people from a higher social class. The expression blue-collar was coined in the year 1920s to refer to the American workers who carry out physical labor jobs. These jobs were very untidy, so the workers would dress in dark outfit in order to minimize the appearance of stains. Many also dress in outfits or shirts that were usually blue, hence the term blue collar. Blue collar workers include the gatekeepers, construction workers, mill workers, and production employees. Most blue-collar workers are paid a low hourly remuneration, though the wage varies significantly depending upon the particular occupation and the worker's level of skill. In contrast, the white-collar crime workers generally have higher paying jobs that do not involve the manual labor. White-collar workers tend to work in office setting. Therefore, they are able to wear the white collars without fear of getting them dirty. White-collar workers include the accountants, business managers, lawyers, and doctors. Blue-collar crime is not a proper legal classification of the crime. It's a casual term that is used to describe certain types of crimes. Blue-collar crimes are those that are most commonly committed by people who are from a lower social class, such as the blue-collar workers. Blue-collar workers may not have access to the same resources as white-collar crime workers or the white-collar workers. So they tend to commit crimes that are immediate and personal in nature, such as robbery, rather than the crimes that involve elaborate planning. This is not to say that white-collar workers don't commit the blue-collar crimes. Rather, it's just that the people who commit the crimes have, the majority of these crimes are from a lower social class. Next is about the general types of blue-collar crimes. First is crimes against person. Crime against person means any crime which is committed against any individual or the society. Basically, any crime which is against an individual is obviously a crime against the society, and this is the basic concept of the penal functioning of the public administration. Crimes against a person may involve violence or the intimidation of violence against others. Violence including homicide, robbery, rape, causing grave and conventional injuries and aggravated assaults, etc. Next is the crimes against property. Crimes against property involve theft of goods belonging to others, including burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft and arson, etc. The common type of crimes related to property is housebreaking, as it is the most frequently observed to be committed by the individuals of the lower class of the society. Often it has been seen that persons working as the domestic helpers, rag pickers, hawkers, etc. are involved in the collusion of any such activity. Next are the victimless crimes. This category involves the violation of law in which there are no readily apparent crimes, a contradiction including the prostitution, gambling and drug abuse. It has been often observed that persons of lower class of society, due to lack of education and awareness, get indulged in drug trafficking in order to earn livelihood, which in turn becomes an unescapable habit for them. Similarly, girls may be victimized for the purpose of human trafficking and prostitution. This either may be due to their own necessity of money or may be due to any compelling element or factor. Next is the juvenile delinquency. The juvenile delinquency refers to criminal acts performed by juveniles. Most legal systems prescribe specific procedures for dealing with juveniles, such as the juvenile detention centers. There are a multitude of different theories on the causes of crime, and most if not all which can be applied to the cases of youth crime. Youth crime is an aspect of crime which receives great attention from the news media and politicians. Next, about the divergence from the white collar crimes. Blue collar is popular expression applied to the positions involving significant amount of manual labor. The term is typically applied to positions involving low skill levels and low wages, although not every blue collar position matches that description. As such, many people call the criminal activities involving significant amounts of manual labor that are committed by indigent defendants the blue collar crime. The characterization includes all violent crimes and a number of property crimes also, including but not limited to assault, robbery, burglary and murder. For the most part, the blue collar crimes is categorized by high risks and low rewards. Sentencing for blue collar crimes hinges upon the specific offense charged and what occurred during its commission. Many blue collar crimes involve confronting the victim directly. Crimes such as murder, aggravated assault and robbery necessarily require the offender to encounter the victim. Even crimes committed by defendants who are actively looking to avoid a confrontation with the victim, such as burglars, still entail a risk of confrontation. A burglary can easily turn into a robbery. As such, the penalties for the blue collar crime tend to be more severe than the other types of crimes. Sentences are longer, perpetrators are incarcerated in higher security institutions, and probation or parole can be more difficult to obtain. In contrast to the blue-collar crimes, the white-collar crimes are defined as the moral or the ethical violation that follows the ideals integral within the principles of what is known as the natural law. Natural law encompasses or the emphasis on the behaviors or the activities that are defined as wrong because they are infringing the ethical principles of a particular culture, the subculture or the group. The immoral nature of the activities is seen as the foundation for defining the certain types of white-collar crimes and the activities as criminal. Specifically, some experts have a preference to define the white-collar crimes as violation of criminal law. From this outline, the white-collar crimes are criminally illegal behaviors committed by the upper-class individuals during the course of their occupation. From a coordination standpoint, those functioning in the criminal justice system would likely define the white-collar crimes as criminally illegal behaviors. Now we will study about the causing factors of the blue-collar crimes. In criminology, the blue-collar crime is any crime committed by an individual from a lower social class as opposed to the white-collar crimes, which is associated with the crime committed by individuals of a higher social class. These are easier to detect. People are more afraid of these crimes. The blue-collar crimes are more sensational crimes and thereby put more pressure on police due to fear. The issue before the experts is to determine the causing factors of the blue-collar crimes, which is not easily understood. However, some of the identified reasons may be: first is lack of education. According to the intellectuals, the purpose of education is not merely to edify the individual, but also to produce the ethical and the social aptitude which is necessary for the development of the nation apart from his own. The concept of education is to incorporate the moral values in the individuals. Lack of education may make unable the individuals to differentiate between the ethically correct and wrong activities. The relation between the education and crime may be more complicated, however, since it depends on the large measure on the way education affects the relative opportunities available to the offenders in different illegitimate activities. Offenders committing crimes against property would have a tendency to enter the criminal activity at a relatively young age, fundamentally just because lack of schooling and legitimate training are not important obstacles to such activities, and because legitimate earnings opportunities available to the young age groups may generally fall short of their personal illegitimate remuneration. Next comes the lack of social awareness. It has been a matter of debate among the scholars that lack of education is not the influencing factor for the instigation of crimes committed by the indigenous class of the society, but it is the lack of the social awareness. There is a large portion of the society which is not literate in a formal way, but cultured enough to refrain themselves from any such immoral activity. Lack of social awareness can also originate the desire of committing the legal activity. Moral education cannot be operative in an economically undue society. Consequently, additional research is necessary using a more multifarious models of crime and control to include variables such as the opportunities or the reasons comparative to a nation's standard of living, would be punishment, chance of being caught, law enforcement exertions, and expenses on larceny and property crime relative to other crimes. then bulk of the country's criminal population, education levels, and other socio-economic factors. Then third comes the lack of employment opportunities. For an individual, employment is an inevitable necessity for his survival. Lack of employment can make any individual exasperated to indulge in the immoral activity. The main reason is to earn anyhow to fulfill the daily requirements. Due to uncontrollable population problem, it is not feasible to provide employment to each and every person, and most of the individual gets deprived of the employment opportunity. The unemployment may prompt the cause of blue-collar crimes. The connection between the unemployment and crime is unpredictable. Nevertheless, appropriately directed research on young males, particularly those from the underprivileged indigenous groups, which contemplates both the significance and extent of unemployment, has yet to be done. The implication of unemployment will fluctuate depending on its extent, social valuations of the culpability, previous familiarity of steady employment, discernment of impeding prospects, comparison with other groups, etc. Therefore, there is likely to be a contributory correlation between the relative deficit and crime, predominantly where unemployment is supposed as unwarranted and despairing by comparison with the other groups. Then comes the lack of basic amenities. Food, shelter, hygiene, education, etc. are the basic amenities required for any individual, and lack of such of these basic facilities may physiologically bring about the causing factors for the blue-collar crimes. They may not be directly influencing factors, but the secondary factors are mostly responsible for the blue-collar crimes. It is vital for citizens to receive these services they need at the minimum cost to the individuals, and administration should be capable to handle the statistics quickly and proficiently, be it the monitoring project status or reaching out to the people. Today, billions of people, nearly half of the world's population, lives in cities. According to a survey, 1/3 of them are slum dwellers. Moreover, 4 out of 10 inhabitants in the developing world are living in informal shelters. They experience manifold deprivations, not only houses unfit for habitation, but also lack of adequate food, education, health, and the basic services. Next comes the deprivation of the executive initiatives. It is the duty and responsibility of the respective government and public administration to check and resolve the problems faced by the citizens, and also to hold such initiatives which are necessary for the development of the poor and the indigenous class of society. Lack of initiatives and programs for the development may be the indirect factor for the initiation of blue-collar crimes. Next, we will study about the repercussions of the blue-collar crimes. Every potential criminal is limited in the prospect to commit crime by the situation in which he or she occupies in society. If the individual is employed in a low or unskilled job and lives in an inner city environment, pilfering inventory from the workplace may not produce value, and not many neighbors may have the valuable property to steal. This is significance both for the type of crimes likely to be committed and for the law enforcement also, because there are fewer opportunities to use a skill more blue collar crimes may involve the use of force, and because more people are injured, there is a greater chance that the victim will report the crime. In contrast, in cases of the white collar crime, it shades onto the corporate crime and there is less chance that any crime will be reported. The most common forms of predatory crimes are rape, robbery, assault, burglary, misappropriation and auto theft, which occurs most frequently on urban streets. Racial minority citizens account for a disproportionately higher number of the arrests for such street crimes. The types of crimes committed are a function of the opportunities available to the potential offender. Thus, those employed in relatively unskilled environments and living in inner city areas have the situations to exploit than those who work in situations where large financial transactions are being made or occurring and live in areas where there is relative prosperity. The blue collar crimes tends to be more obvious and attract more active police attention. Example for the crimes such as vandalism or shoplifting, which protects the property and interests. Whereas the white collar employees can intermingle legitimate and the criminal behavior and can be less obvious when committing the crime. Thus, the blue collar crime will be more often use of the physical force, whereas in the corporate world the identification of a victim is less obvious and the issue of reporting is complicated by a culture of commercial confidentiality so as to protect the shareholders' value. Now we'll summarize all that we have studied in this module. The blue collar crime is a term used to define the crimes that are committed principally by people who are from the lower social class or lower strata of the society. The types of crime committed are a function of the opportunities available to the potential offender. In contrast, the white collar workers generally have higher paying jobs that do not involve manual labor. The white collar workers tend to work in an office setting, therefore they are able to wear the white collars without fear of getting them dirty. Basically, any crime which is against an individual is obviously a crime against the society, and there is a basic concept of the penal functioning of the public administration. The blue collar crime is a colloquialism applied to positions involving significant amounts of manual labor. This term is typically applied to positions involving low skill levels and low wages. Although not every blue collar position matches that description. Many blue collar crimes involve confronting the victim directly. Crimes such as murder, aggravated assault and robbery necessarily require the offender to encounter the victim. The blue collar crime will more often use physical force, whereas in the corporate world the identification of a victim is less obvious and the issue of reporting is complicated by a chance of commercial confidentiality so as to protect the shareholders' value.